Earlier this week, I spoke with Timothy Frye, the Marshall Shulman Professor of Post-Soviet Politics at Columbia University, to discuss the effect of Russia's invasion on global energy, the economy, and politics.
Let's just start from the broadest perspective as possible, Tim, which is how, in your mind, has the invasion of Ukraine changed the global picture, not just what's happening within Europe, but even throughout the globe?
Well, for me, the biggest change has been in energy markets, where prior to the war, Russia supplied about 40 to 50% of Europe's gas. And Vladimir Putin thought that this was going to be his ace in the hole, that he would be able to use this to really leverage his position in Ukraine and keep Europe at bay. But to the surprise of everyone, Europe has really stood out in their ability to shift from getting gas from Russia, which makes perfect economic sense, to getting gas from Algeria, the US, and Norway. So Putin has lost this sense of leverage, and going forward, it's really accelerated the green transition in Europe, where Europe is now buying 50% more solar panels from China than they were prior to the war. So it's going to be difficult for Russia to get those markets back in the future.
What's your assessment of what the invasion of Ukraine has done to the West, or the United States, Europe, and how it's changed in the last year?
Well, it's really demonstrated the role of the United States as the leader of a broad coalition, not just in Europe, but also in Asia as well. I mean, bringing on board South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan as important players in the sanctions regime. The other issue is the reinvigoration of NATO. You know, NATO was kind of wandering, looking around for a mission, and you know, they say they're building a bust of Vladimir Putin, you know, at NATO headquarters because he's really reinvigorated NATO. And if Putin thought that he could Finlandize NATO by intimidating them into being neutral, instead, he's kind of NATOized Finland, as Finland and Sweden are now looking to join NATO.
What's the sticky material that keeps this alliance together?
Well, you know, the U.S. has played a key coordinating role, and I give the Biden administration a lot of credit for particularly how they dealt with Germany, which obviously has a very complicated history in the region. And Biden, behind the scenes, was gently pushing the Germans to kind of make the right decisions, but not be so far out front that the Germans would be seen to be being pressured by Washington. So eventually they got to the right place where they were willing to, for example, provide tanks to Ukraine, which, you know, if we would have thought that a year ago, I think that would have been really difficult to conceive of.
How have sanctions operated? Have they worked or not worked with respect to Russia?
Sanctions have been an important signal of Western solidarity, right? That Western countries are willing to suffer some economic losses and economic hardships to send a message that, you know, violating international sovereignty is unacceptable. The sanctions have also helped to degrade Russia's military capacity. You know, you need lots of the high-tech chips that are more difficult for Russia to get. At the same time, they have not caused the Russian economy to collapse the way many have predicted. You know, Russia's a big economy, you know, 145 million people, well-educated public, and, you know, they are pretty adept at finding ways to get substitutes from China or Turkey. Although the sanctions do make life much more difficult, and they've no doubt slowed the Russian economy, they haven't produced the kind of collapse that some people thought.
Do you have any sense of how this ends?
Well, you know, I think if we look at war termination, around a quarter of wars end within a few weeks or a month, about a quarter of wars end after about 6 months. Once wars last for a year or longer, they tend to last for a long period of time, unfortunately. And, you know, the Russian side still has a lot of capacity, particularly if China were to take a more active role in you know, supplying military aid to Russia. That would be a very worrying sign. Ukraine shows no sign of giving up. The fortitude and the resilience of the Ukrainian people have been just astounding. And I think it would be very difficult for Zelensky to sell an agreement that is short of reuniting all of Ukraine, however we want to define it.
So as a final question, it's open-ended, so take it anywhere you want. But what other big changes do you think are indelible or surprised you over the last year?
I think people thought there would be greater resistance from among the Russian public towards the war. We did have, 700,000 Russians left the country immediately, and many of them have stayed abroad. But we haven't seen the kinds of anti-war protests, and in part that's a testament to the fear that the Putin regime has been able to instill in their insistence that even minor protests against the war often provoke very severe punishments. I think going forward, we're likely to see real cleavages in Russian society develop, and similar as we saw in the Vietnam War in the United States. We're already seeing big splits between how people under 40 view the war in Russia and people over 60. There's a huge gap. And I think this generation gap, is going to be a very important thing to watch going forward.
It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.